Good morning and welcome to United Way for Southeastern Michigan's virtual town hall. My name is Audrey Walker, and today we will be joined by Melanie McElroy, a voting rights expert. Melanie will answer your questions about voting during the last 10 minutes of today's town hall. So please leave your questions in the Q&A box if you're watching on Zoom or in the comment box on Facebook. Now I would like to give a warm welcome to United Way's President and CEO, Dr. Darian Hudson, to say a few words.
Thank you, Audrey, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming back and joining us to learn about this very important topic, very timely topic around election protection. We know that voting looks and feels very different this year. Some of you may be using absentee ballots or going to drop off your ballots for the first time. I did myself last week, so definitely looking forward to learning more about how we can guarantee that our vote is going to be counted and that it matters. Please understand also that this election is so much bigger than just the president. And I say that because when you get your ballot, you will see front and back, it goes all the way down to the bottom. That's Senate races, that's our local representatives, that's ballot initiatives, that's school board members. And it's very important that we lean in, take the time to do the research and complete our entire ballot. But some of you might be wondering, because there's a lot of rhetoric out there, a lot of people talking about this process this year and what it means for you. So we're fortunate that we have an expert right here at home in Melanie McElroy. So I wanted to share a little bit about her and then I'll turn it over to her. Melanie is a Detroit-based voting rights expert who has run election protection plans throughout the state of Michigan over the last decade. She is currently based with Michigan Voices, a nonpartisan civic engagement organization. She's trained thousands of volunteers to assist voters and protect polling places in Michigan cities, focusing her efforts on communities where minority voters, seniors, students, and people struggling with language, literacy, or physical access to the polls have been disenfranchised. So it goes without saying that we are so fortunate to have her in our state and with us today. So without further ado, Melanie, the floor is yours and welcome to our virtual town hall.
Thank you all so much. I've been looking forward to this. I'm very excited to talk to you about Michigan's new voter rules and how we can help protect our neighborhoods at the polls next week. So if I can, I'm going to share my screen quickly so that you all can see what I'm talking about. Hopefully you can see it now. I am part of a network with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights nationally, and they have a hotline. It's 866-OUR-VOTE. It's very important to remember that this year. And I run the Michigan Grassroots Program of monitors and eyes and ears on the ground on election day that are looking out for any questions that folks have, any issues, and we funnel those all in through the hotline where we have attorney volunteers here in our state who can come out and help. So it's great to put that out there on Facebook. You also might see some of our signs out and about, but this is a great way to have your questions answered and to get help every day leading up to the election and on election day. So when I reference our hotline, this is the one I'm talking about. We also have this hotline in several other languages. It is 844-YELLOW-US for Arabic assistance, 888-VEI-VOTA for Spanish, and then for a whole host of Asian Pacific Island languages, it's 888-API-VOTE. So I will reference those again as well. You may remember that there were quite a few issues during the August primary just because we were in the heat of coronavirus discomfort. Everyone was a little nervous. Not enough poll workers showed up. Some of our polling places had to merge and close. So it was a pretty tense time. And since then, we've been working very closely with the Secretary of State, with local clerks, engaging new poll workers and new volunteers to make sure that the November election runs much more smoothly. And we're very confident that it will. One gap is that a lot of Michigan voters just aren't aware that we changed a lot of our election laws in 2018 when we voted on Proposition 3 and that passed. And so many of us are just not quite comfortable with what our rights are in Michigan versus what they used to be and then versus other states. So I want to go through just a couple of main voters' rights Number one, in Michigan, we have the right to vote with felony records. We actually have the right to vote on probation and on parole as well. And if folks are in jail awaiting trial, they have the right to register to vote and to vote absentee from jail, as long as they have not started to serve their sentence yet. So that's very unique to Michigan. Other states don't have this, and that's where some confusion lies. And unfortunately, sometimes correctional and parole officers have the wrong information, and that's how it spreads. So it's great to remind people, as long as they're finished serving that sentence, no matter if they're on probation or on parole, they do have the right to register and to vote in Michigan. We should be prepared that in almost every single township and city in Michigan, we have to vote on an English ballot. There are a couple of caveats to that. In Hamtramck, if you apply ahead of time, you can vote in Bengali, and there are a few other townships throughout Michigan, but for the most part, people do have to vote in English, but there are a few different ways that we can help make sure that that process is seamless. Number one, they can take in any cheat sheets or printed materials with them that might help. Number two, a person with limited language skills, limited literacy, or with any visual impairment does have the right to use the audio assistance machine inside each precinct that actually reads the ballot to you. So that's an option. And then also anybody, for whether it's a disability, whether it's a language barrier, or any other discomfort, they may take an assistant in with them to vote. We are allowed to take anyone who is not an employer or a union representative. Those are antiquated laws that are in there, but you may take someone with you, or of course vote absentee from home and feel a little more comfortable. But the Secretary of State just launched the language access website, mi.gov/SOS language access, that has the ability to click on any of these different languages, see your sample ballots, see your voting rights, and help talk to your neighbors in different communities that speak these languages. And if you'd like to screenshot right here, these are the direct links to each of these language sites that'll really help voters who, my mom's an immigrant, I can tell you that even if you know English very well and have been here a long time, it's always difficult to read that ballot language, especially on the back. Photo ID is not a barrier in Michigan. If you don't have a driver's license, that is okay. They're going to ask you for it because that's the easiest way for them to find you in the book and to see your name very clearly. But if you don't have a driver's license or a state issued ID or a military or a tribal ID, all you have to do is sign an affidavit when you get there. It'll be on the back of the little paper that you already write your name on when you show up. The affidavit affirms your identity with your signature, and it allows you to vote a regular ballot, not a provisional, not a challenged ballot, nothing like that. You can vote regular. So if you have a driver's license, it's the easiest thing to just show them. But if you don't, that's okay. It doesn't keep you from voting in Michigan, but it does in other states. So make sure that you are qualifying that with in Michigan if you're posting this online. Polling places must be accessible in Michigan. So if a voter cannot physically enter because a ramp is not available, an elevator isn't working, the door isn't wide enough for a wheelchair or something else, poll workers are actually required to bring those materials out to the voter, to set up a card table, to bring a little privacy screen for them, anything that needs to happen, whether it's in their car, to the sidewalk, so that the voter is able to vote privately and to vote comfortably if they cannot make it inside of the door. One of the great new laws that was passed in Michigan is that now we don't have a 30-day window. It used to be if you didn't register to vote within 30 days of an election, you were out of luck. But now, luckily, we have the right to register any day up until election day and actually register on election day as well. I'm missing my slide here, I apologize. But you can go to mi.gov/vote. Make sure that you are registered at your current address. You can also re-register if you need to, but due to the fact that we're so close to the election, the only option right now is to register at the clerk's office. We also allowed for online registration as a part of that bill, but we could only do that until October 19th. So as of this little window between now and election day, the only way to register to vote is to go to your township or city clerk's office, not county clerk's office. Make sure it's your township or city clerk's office. Register to vote with either a driver's license, again, if you have one, Or if you don't have one, you can bring any sort of proof of residency. That can be a utility bill, that can be a government check stub, that can be a pay stub, anything that has your address on it, and you can get registered. When you go do that, you can actually right away ask for an absentee ballot, fill it out, and turn it back in and be done. Or you can take an absentee ballot home with you and come back. Or if you take that receipt that says you just registered to vote, you can actually go to your assigned polling place and vote on election day if you prefer. Oh, I already said that, sorry. It's really important to know that we can vote for any reason absentee. It used to be you had to be over 60, you had to be working on election day, you had to be out of town on election day. Now any of us can vote absentee. And this is a huge deal because right now, people think that we are being encouraged to vote from home because of COVID-19 and because of social distancing, but that's not true. This was actually part of the package of bills that we passed in 2018, the Proposition 3. And so we already had the right to vote absentee, and it just happens to be very convenient for 2020. And so there are a lot of questions around absentee voting. There's a lot of confusion, and that's mostly because we've just never had this expanded right before. It used to be that you had to have a reason why you couldn't go to the polls, but now any of us can take advantage of it. And that's also allowed for a thing that a lot of people are calling early voting. It's technically early in-person absentee voting in Michigan. You're not voting a real ballot into a tabulator, you're voting an absentee ballot that gets counted on election day. So those votes aren't being counted as you vote them. But it's a great way to expand the ability for folks to vote safely, to either vote from home or to vote at a clerk's office or at a satellite location. I'm in Detroit, so we here have 23 satellite locations this year, which is very new, but we can go to any of those. They're on the Department of Elections website for Detroit, and you can find the closest one to you. It doesn't matter which one you're near, which one you live next to. As long as you're a resident of that city, you can vote at any satellite location that that city offers. So they're just there for your convenience, and you don't have to register ahead of time. You don't have to request an absentee ballot ahead of time. You can just show up, fill it out, and turn it right back in. I'm sure there will be questions about what happens if you requested an absentee and it never came. What happens if you made a mistake? In any of those cases, go right to your city clerk's office or township's clerk's office, and they'll be able to spoil the original one through a process where you just sign an affidavit and give you a new ballot to vote. That can happen whether you made a mistake or whether the other one never came. All of the spoiling process means is that they're making sure that that other ballot doesn't get counted, that for each voter, only one ballot gets counted. And so they want to make sure the one that you're voting last and the one that you want to count is the one that will be chosen. Secure drop boxes are a very new thing in places like Detroit and in other cities. And they really are the safest way to turn in your ballot because we are no longer relying on the mail to get it to you. But this is the sort of thing that if you have an issue with your absentee ballot, if you have any kind of confusion, you can call the 866 Our Vote hotline, and an attorney can either just answer your questions or help track it down for you if something like that happened. And I know we're going to pause for questions now, but just a couple of other things to remember. When folks go into the polls, they're not going to be allowed to wear campaign logos, to wear stickers or a hat or anything that represents a political party or a campaign. So just remember to cover those up. And if for whatever reason they're not finding you in the poll book, that poll worker is supposed to help you find where to go. But the 866 Our Vote hotline can also help. So make sure that people know all about that. I'm going to pause because I know there are probably a lot of questions, but it's just really important to remember that the more confident that we are in Michigan voters' rights, the more we can help other voters advocate for themselves. Because what happens more often than not is that well-meaning poll workers might say the wrong thing, and if a voter doesn't know to correct them, they might just go home and allow themselves to be turned away.
Thank you, Melanie, so much for all this wonderful information. We do have a couple more minutes if you have some things to share, or we can get right into the questions, which is fine.
I can go on forever, but a couple just
okay. I'm sure.
I have to remember are that when you do vote absentee, what we're hearing back from clerks is that people are forgetting to sign the outside of that envelope. And so after you fill it out, you put it in a little privacy half envelope, you stick that in the orange envelope or whatever color your city is. And as soon as you seal it, you have to sign the outside of that envelope. And that signature has to either match the one that is on your DMV file, on your driver's license, or the one that you used when you registered to vote. So make sure it's your government signature and not just the one you do at the grocery store. And that's the only way that they're going to be able to open it and to count it. So we're hearing back from a lot of clerks that are trying to, if they have time, they'll try to track you down and have you sign it after the fact. But many of them don't have the time or capacity to do that. So remember to sign absentee ballots. And then also another thing that clerks are asking us to remind people is that for the safety of the voter's ballot, to make sure that nothing happens to it, only a voter or someone in their immediate household or immediate family is able to turn that in for them. And I know that a lot of organizers and campaigns say, well, it's a lot easier if we just help them out. But just to keep the votes sacred and to keep them completely confidential, we need to make sure that only a voter or someone in their direct family that they have designated turns those in. So it's a great opportunity to drive someone over to a drop box, allow them to plop it in. We want to keep people as safe as possible. Of course, everyone's social distancing. And on that front, most city clerks have asked their poll workers to create social distancing indoors, but it's going to be up to voters to really take care of themselves. There is no rule mandating masks at the polls. That would be required, or that would be considered a poll tax or some sort of a barrier to voting if there was a requirement to wear a mask to get in. So we do advocate for a voter's right above masks on election day, which is counterintuitive for me. But for that reason, we're making sure that where possible, precincts all have paper masks available for people. And we just recommend that you expect to go and wait for a little while. If you're voting on election day, we don't know where the long lines are going to be. A lot of folks did vote absentee, but in case you're stuck in line for a little bit, make sure you've got a warm coat, bring a water bottle, a mask, and try to socially distance. When I voted in the primary, I took my own black pen. That helped me feel more comfortable, so I wasn't using the same pen that they were handing to everybody else. I took my hand sanitizer. So do what makes you feel comfortable, or head to a satellite location or your clerk's office early, because chances are there's more space there, and they might give you a little bit more time to vote, and you won't feel the pressure of voting on election day.
Lots of great information, lots of great tips, and we do have some follow-up questions here. So to your point about the absentee ballots and the ballots that people have been already submitting, if there is an issue with the ballot, would you expect a clerk to contact you, or does that depend on what city you live in?
It really depends on the city, because some clerks are so overburdened trying to get ballots out in time that I would not rely on that. So a couple things a voter can do: you can actually track your ballot after you requested it at mi.gov/vote. So through the Secretary of State's website, and some city clerks' websites also allow you to do this. You can track whether your ballot was sent out, and then once you send it back, whether it was received. And it's really important for people to kind of keep an eye on that, because if you see that your ballot was sent out 3 weeks ago, you still haven't received it, the clock is ticking, you really want to vote, it's important to go intervene and try to do something different. So if you live in a smaller city where the clerk is available on the phone, call them and ask them for advice. They might say, hey, you're on my list, I overnighted it yesterday, wait and see if it comes today. If you're in a larger city where you're not able to call by phone, you may have to go to that city clerk's office and ask them to spoil the one that's lost in the mail and hand you a new one. And you can usually vote it right there.
And what's the best way for me to find out where my clerk's office is?
So that is also located at mi.gov/vote. You can find your clerk's office. You can verify whether you're registered. You can also see a sample ballot. So you can start to familiarize yourself, especially with those questions and the judicial races and all the stuff I usually forget. And any other information is at mi.gov/vote. And then once you know who your clerk is, you can maybe head to their website. They'll let you know if they have satellite locations or other, but I think most of that information is currently fed into the mi.gov/vote site. There are a lot of great sites out there. Every organization has a fancy site, lots of colors, but I tend to use this one because it has the most up-to-date information, because clerks have to feed this information up to the Secretary of State's office. And then when you go to the polls, I should also say that you may see volunteers that have a t-shirt like this that says election protection, or they may be holding a sign, and those are one of our grassroots monitors that might just be there to see if there are any problems, to hand out information about the hotline, but they're completely nonpartisan, and so it's a great resource to get help from someone who's doesn't care which way you vote, they just want to make sure that you are safe.
Great. And to that point too, I know even with early voting, sometimes there'll still be people that want to go to the polls, or we do have people who are going to be voting in person, but they need a ride. Is there information that you can share about that?
So there is a little bit of confusion around rides right now, because a ruling just came down from the courts last week that made it not legal for organizations to pay these bus companies. We had started a program here with the Detroit Bus Company, and they made it not legal to do mass rides to the polls programs. However, you can still have volunteer rides to the polls programs. So if your church or if your organization wanted to donate their vans that day and go around offering rides, that's still perfectly legal. Anyone who's even paid to do election type work and uses that time to donate rides can still totally do that. So you will see people out doing rides. Because of social distancing, the normal groups that do it may not be able to. And so we're trying to figure out what the best place to send people is. And as of right now, if you either go to michiganvoting.org, that's the ACLU's voter help website, they're going to post the most up-to-date information on there about their ride program, or just through calling the 866-OUR-VOTE hotline. As these rules are changing with the rides to the polls, they're going to have the most up-to-date information, and we'll hopefully be able to direct the caller to the best ride service.
That's great information, because we want to make sure everybody, obviously access is so key here with that. Now, I know you mentioned earlier where you were talking about your possibility of having audio assistance if you needed it at your precinct, or any assistant. Is that true at all precincts, or would you need to call to find that out, and then how would we do that?
So legally, it is supposed to be available at every precinct, and that's an issue that we find in many places, where there's the rule and then there's what actually happens when you show up.
Right.
And so we tend to fill in that space in between of how can we support community from here to here. And so definitely, even if you're voting, I would say if you're voting as an able-bodied person, if you're going to your polling place to vote on election day, these are the sorts of questions that you can ask. I just want to make sure, you can even make something up and say, I have a friend who might need an audio assistance machine. I just want to make sure they can come here. Is it up and running? Something like that. Or just straight up ask them like I do, is your ADA accessible audio assistance machine up and running today? Is it programmed? Is it ready to go? If the poll worker seems completely confused, does not know what this is, please call the hotline and let us know, and we'll send someone down there to make sure it gets figured out. But every precinct should be accessible both through audio and physical entrance and exits.
Great. And then speaking of that too, if you do have an issue at your poll with some of the things you mentioned that should either be available, or, if you don't have your ID, but then they said they're trying to turn you away or something like that, is the best course of action to call the hotline, or what else should somebody do to ensure that they can get their vote in?
So I recommend calling the hotline, because not only will they be able to help you, but we're also going to keep that data of where it happened, what sorts of issues have happened in that particular precinct, and we're going to analyze that to see, well, this city had a big problem with not training their poll workers, XYZ. So it helps us after election day too. But if you live somewhere outside of Detroit where the clerk is easy to reach by the phone. Also let them know. I would do both. I would both alert the hotline so that it's on our radar, but then also let the clerk know, because the clerk may do a quick fix for the voter, but then not fix whatever systemic problem caused it. And so we would be able to help on that end. So I would do both. If you're in Detroit, unfortunately, the phone rings off the hook on election day. So we want to make sure that those phones are available for seniors and other people who really rely on talking to somebody.
And then as far as that though, if you do get turned away, should you then go to your clerk's office to be able to submit your ballot? Is that the best course of action?
So on election day, you can no longer vote at your clerk's office unless you are there to register for the first time. So if you are registering yourself to vote at the clerk's office, then they'll let you vote absentee. But the deadline for anyone else to vote at the clerk's office is Monday. So you can still vote there on Monday. Tuesday, you no longer can. So if you are going there to complain about something that happened at the polling place, they'll more than likely help you fix the problem and then send you back there. And again, I only recommend that if you live in a smaller city.
Sure, but that's definitely helpful information, because a lot of times something will happen and then a person will give up or they won't know what to do next, and they still want to get their vote in. We all want to get our votes in. So that's really important with that. And then, we keep talking about calling this 866-OUR-VOTE hotline. What can somebody expect when they call that?
So you will expect a Michigan-based volunteer attorney. I've made all of my attorney friends volunteer over the last few weeks, so I've gotten their end of what that experience is like. Usually these calls are routed to an actual boardroom. Now it's all individual, so these folks are volunteering on their computers in their own space, and they're going to ask you where you are, if you're at a polling place, what precinct number that is, or if you're calling on behalf of somebody else. They'll ask for your phone number just so they can call you back for follow-up or to help you figure it out, and then they'll have you just describe what happened, and they may have some additional follow-up questions, but for the most part, they're going to get you off the phone as soon as possible so they can get to fixing it. And if you have a question, all of us have supplied them with just about everything they need to answer your questions, the lists of satellite locations. They've all been trained on voters' rights in Michigan, and anything else that they might need to answer your question. And like I said, if there is a language barrier, there are these other hotlines that they can send the caller to.
Great. And I just have one last question before we wrap it up here. Is there a way that I could be able to volunteer to be an election protection worker?
You absolutely can. And I should have brought a link with me to post in there, but even just through collecting anyone who wants to become a volunteer through United Way, I am happy to send United Way our Zoom trainings. We have one more on Thursday evening, and we probably will do at least one or two over the weekend. They're quick, just hour-and-a-half trainings where we go over a lot of what we talked about today, but then more in detail about how specifically you can plug in as a poll monitor, whether you're stationed at a particular polling place or you're roaming around several different places, just checking in and letting us know how they look.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been such valuable information for all of us here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hudson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and thank you, Audrey. I'm actually sitting here looking in my phone to try to find the links that you were referencing. Another that we didn't lift today, but I want to make sure everyone is aware of, is info@Detroit. NAACP.org. They sent out an announcement yesterday. They need phone bakers right away, and it's virtual, and they're doing this, I believe, right up until Election Day. So it's all hands on deck. Hopefully you've been able to take that away from what Melanie shared with us today. I've been more charged than ever to make sure not only that I vote, but that my friends vote, my family votes, that my staff votes. We are taking a paid holiday on Tuesday to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to vote, and they also have the opportunity to serve. It is not a day off, but a day on. So everyone listening today, get that vote in. Melanie told us we have until Monday. So if you haven't done it, please, please, please go ahead and get that vote done, because we need your help on Tuesday to make sure that everyone who needs a ride, anyone who is having challenges getting a ballot, anyone who's not sure what to do can come to you for help, and you can get them to the polls. So thank you so much. And last but not least, just wanted to remind you that we do have 211 available. Still, it's our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline. If you need help in any way, whether it's with utility assistance, rental assistance, food pantries, you can call 211, or you can visit unitedwayscm.org/211 for help. Continue. I know we're a little bit over time. You can go to the next slide, Cass. So one more time, you've heard us say this over and over again. Get a good look at those websites. Please, please, please make sure you take advantage of voting early. This was a right that we voted for and earned, as Melanie told us, prior to the pandemic. So we want to make sure that this was not done in vain and that we take advantage of these resources. So please, please, please get out and vote now through November 3rd, not on November 3rd, through November 3rd. But if you haven't done it yet, November 3rd, obviously you can get out there and still vote, but we're trying to push everyone to do it as early as possible. So next week, we are actually taking a break because we are going to make sure that we are putting all of our energy into helping getting people out to the polls and then providing whatever volunteer assistance we can as people are counting ballots. So we will actually return on November 11th, which is Veterans Day. And in honor of our veterans, we are going to have Ryan Engel, who is the partnership coordinator for the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, who is going to be sharing important resources for our veterans during this time. So until then, be well. You can sign up for town hall alerts at unitedwayscm.org/virtual town halls. And we look forward to this continued conversation and partnership. So again, Melanie, one more time, just want to say thank you so much. This was so valuable. And we're very grateful to the services that you're providing to our community. And with that, be well and stand united.